Hello, I'm Kathleen Dunn. You're listening to the Ideas Network of Wisconsin Public Radio for this Tuesday it is. I was off yesterday. Thanks to Peter Donalds for filling in for me while I celebrated President's Day in a very quiet way. It's the 20th of February, this hour of the program. I don't know if you saw the Week in Review last Sunday. It was a front page story in the New York Times, and it had the headline, Leftward Ho? Found in part of the first paragraph, there is even talk of a stutter, clear throat, perish the thought, liberal resurgence. The article asked the question, do we have a liberal moment here or a conservative slump? Presidential candidates are talking about universal health care without being tarred as supporters of socialized medicine. There is support for raising the minimum age. Stem cell research is on the table. Gay and lesbian civil unions, alternative energy, increased financial aid to offset the cost of college. Voters 18 to 25 are much more Democratic than previous generations. And the ratio for Democratic voters who describe themselves as liberal, 32%, has gone up, while those who say they are conservative Democrats has dropped. 4 years earlier, well, that's 23%. 4 years earlier, it was 27% of Democrats identifying themselves as conservatives and 26% as liberals. So, is this a liberal trend, or is this just a little bitty liberal moment in history? We have two guests with us to talk about this, and I think that we'll have a lot of calls on this issue as well. Professor Joseph Lowndes is with us, assistant professor in political science at the University of Oregon. Professor Lowndes, hello. Thanks so much for being with us. Whoops. Professor Lowndes, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Can you
good.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And also joining us is Professor Joseph Aistrup, who is head of the Department of Political Science and associate professor at Kansas State University. Professor Aistrup, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, Kathleen, for inviting me.
So what happened in the last 4 years that we have more Democrats who are calling themselves liberal Democrats rather than conservative Democrats? Professor Lowndes, you want to start?
Well, I think that there's a number of ways to look at it, and I think we're not going to know exactly the reasons why this has happened yet. I think it'll take time for these things to shake out. But certainly, the war in Iraq has had a dampening effect on kind of Republican identity generally. I would say that's probably the largest thing. But I think in other ways, basic staples of the Republican message have started to run out of gas a little bit. And so whether this means that liberals are going to be able to build on this is unclear yet. But I think that some issues that have kind of come to the fore in dramatic ways, certainly the Bush administration's campaign in the Middle East, issues of global warming, universal health care, other things have all kind of been cast in a more, well, not progressive light, and certainly people are looking for different answers that have been provided by the Republicans, I think.
And what's the basic staple of the Republican message that we're not buying anymore?
Well, I think you can see, for instance, the way I think privatization as a kind of a larger kind of frame for many domestic policies. Certainly, Social Security, Bush tax cuts. For which have gone to benefit the wealthiest Americans, and other issues, domestically, which are economic issues, kind of old New Deal issues, have come back and become important. And in terms of foreign policy, I think kind of a general unilateralist approach has not turned out the way the Bush administration had promised it would. So I think those are probably two of the major things. And, of course, climate change is the other one, which I think has become important.
Professor Aistrup, why more Democrats saying I'm a liberal?
Well, I think also you have, over the course of a number of years, kind of the foundation being built for more people calling themselves liberal. We have groups like MoveOn.org that have been active, well, since President Clinton's impeachment situation. And they have done a good job of keeping the grassroots growing and strong, and keep making sure that people are out there, or at least individuals who are liberally oriented, are constantly motivated and seeing issues that are at least represent opportunities for liberals to engage. one of the things that's going to be necessary for this to move beyond an infancy, though, for liberalism is for them to come up with what might be called a framework that people can easily apply across a wide range of issues. The Republicans have had the advantage in this respect, especially conservatives, because they have used privatization as kind of their overarching framework, that is the free market and making sure that people have, quote-unquote, their money to spend as opposed to the government having that money through taxes. And I think that's been a very popular type of message because it fits into kind of an overarching framework that a lot of people have in the United States, which is naturally oriented towards kind of a libertarian bent. And so, though, and I think that he's right in the sense that, you know, that message has run on to add on to that situation, the situation of things like Hurricane Katrina, where the government just seemed like it was unable to operate, and that just reflected poorly on the Republicans' ability and the conservative philosophy's ability to govern effectively. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the whole combination of different things, whether it's the kind of privatization running out of steam, or the fact that the government looked like it was unable to really handle a crisis situation because there had been so much disinvestment in government operations over the years, or the situation in Iraq, which has just simply compounded the problems, or any number of different things like global warming. All these things kind of add up to an opportunity now for liberalism to come in with answers where the conservative philosophy seems to have failed.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was always true, although I can remember sometimes when young people said they were more conservative than previous generations. But this other part of the article, voters ages 18 to 25, far more Democratic than previous generations. What does that mean for the upcoming elections? And this has always been a group that's been hard to get to the polls. Is it, well, that's interesting, they're not going to do anything with it, or is this significant?
I think it's significant in the long term, but not in the short term, because you're right. That group of voters is just less likely to make it to the polls. And so as a consequence, you know, their impact upon any given election is only at the margins. And so in a close election, they could play a very important role, but, you know, for the average congressional race, that's probably not the case. And so I think that basically that type of change is important more for the future when that group becomes 25 to 35 and they start owning homes and they start becoming more active in the community, and that life cycle effect of those individuals then starting to play a more active role in politics also comes into play. Yeah,
let's just do this on purely anecdotal evidence, but Professor Lowndes, what are you noticing at the university?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually students active on both the left and right here. Oregon is a very mixed state politically. But I found in the last, say, maybe 3 years, there's been more kind of disenchantment with, say, the Bush administration nationally, and more concern about the war. And so students have become more active in anti-war issues and, again, environmental issues. I think part of it is that you know, the other thing about this is that there's the Republicans, having been in power for so long, have got themselves caught up in corruption scandals, which I think any party that's in Washington for long enough and in dominance will do. But the Abramoff scandal, other things have kind of added up to creating kind of students tend to be idealistic and kind of want a certain sense of kind of innocence and purity in their politics, and I think the Republicans don't represent that for students anymore. Mm-hmm. But students trending Democratic is different than students being really active. I don't think student activism is not as strong as it was even, say, in the late 1990s when there began to be on the left kind of a strong anti-sweatshop movement, for instance, and kind of this growing anti-globalization movement, which kind of came to a screeching halt with September 11th, 2001. But this activism may be building again. But I think that's where students really make a difference, not at the voting booth as much as building kind of youth-oriented social movements, which push change from the outside.